Well, hello there, and welcome to the Queens of Noise podcast. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of our short film, Queens of Noise. And this is episode 2 of the podcast.
Yeah, episode 2. So I'm Jeff Dempsey.
I'm Camille Liptak. We are the co-writers and co-directors of Queens of Noise.
Yeah, so welcome to the podcast. And we're going to be just chatting today about visualization, visualizing your project through and through as you do, as sort of like it's a visual medium. So
right,
that's kind of the name of the game.
Right, and we're going to talk about the visualization process in the creation of your film, from, putting it onto the page to actually executing your vision once you're on set. And so we're kind of looking at 3 parts, talking about what we feel are 3 sort of distinct parts of visualization, but I don't know if they're that distinct because they all kind of relate to one another.
Yeah, they sort of blend together because you're doing them all as you go along a little bit. Yeah, so, the biggest thing I think is that it's a mind game,
Right, it's a mental game.
It's a mental game when you start out doing this.
Yeah, and so that's basically what we're going to focus on with this episode, is just like the different components of that mental game and how, the tips maybe we learned along the way in playing that mental game, which we began in pretty much December of 2024. And so, it was from December 2024 into August, well, even past that because of post-production. So October 2025 and on. So it's like a year-long sort of game you're playing in your head.
Yeah, we've at least been doing it for that long. And so what we're really going to, go into is like, so what does it take to start that process out? And I think the biggest thing that starts it for me is just starting to see in your head what these characters look like, what the story is, so that then you start to bring that onto the paper. Like what are the beats of the story? What is it similar to? And you start to explore that in your head.
Right.
And then you start to put that into some written form.
Yeah. And I mean, that I think that is actually a helpful tool for actors too, even if you're not writing a script. Let's say you're getting the script, you have to start visualizing this world and visualizing the character that you're going to embody.
Yeah.
But if you're the writer, then that's where you're starting from. You're starting from that point of like, okay, what do I see?
Yeah, exactly. What's going on at the time? And I think what I used to tell my students, we'd walk through a little exercise sometimes, called the mental movie theater, or
movie theater of your mind.
Mind theater or something like that.
It sounds like a haunted house.
Mind theater. Sounds like a death metal song. But yeah, so you go to this theater in your mind and you just sort of like lay there quietly with your eyes closed. And you're just exercising the muscle to visualize things, because that's kind of what you have to do. Not everybody is good at it right away, and not everybody can see things in their mind very well.
Well, and that's what I was just going to point out, is like at this current juncture in time, we're often so sort of distracted by things. We're so used to looking at our phone, watching something on TV, or watching something on our computer. Like we're so accustomed to consuming images, even if it's just watching like TV shows all the time.
Right.
And that can be a really beneficial exercise to use to be like, okay, so what's the story that I want to tell? Like, what is the thing that I'm seeing? And it can take a while to get there because we're so used to, taking things in all the time. So to just close our eyes and let our mind our imagination.
Imagination, that's what it is. So you just have to exercise that imagination muscle. And I think that's something that maybe you did more as a kid and it did less as an adult. And so you are starting to do more of that in this creative world.
Well, because that's one of the things
that you're trying to play in.
Right. And that's one of the things that people find so, I think, mesmerizing about film, more so than maybe some of the other creative art forms out there, is that, like, yes, film is a mental game, but it's all, like we were saying before, it's all make-believe.
Yeah.
And whether you are the writer or the director, you're making up a world of characters, a world that isn't real, people who aren't real, unless you're doing like a biopic or something like that. But like you're making something up. Like that's what your imagination is doing.
Just like you're drawing a picture.
Right.
Really.
And I think we get kind of, if you are someone who wants to write their own screenplay or write their own anything, we can get so sort of wrapped up in that idea of it has to be perfect, and if I don't write it perfectly the first time, then I'm a failure.
Right. And that's such a wrong way to approach it.
Yeah. And instead, like we kind of shortcut that process of just imagining. Like just letting the characters kind of come
the
to
ideas.
you and you know, maybe it is just the dialogue first, or maybe it's just this, oh, I see a picture of a car driving down a road.
Yeah. And also relate that to painting as well, because you know, because a lot of times when you think about painting, you're like, oh well, I have this sort of scene in my mind, I want it to look like that. And you kind of want it to look like that pretty early on. Well, it never looks like that really early on.
No.
And you know, and you're actually kind of just starting from a raw sort of like just lines and shapes, you know, scratched onto paper or onto canvas. And it's just sort of like a map of where you're going. And then you know, continually just layers and layers of thought go into it.
Right.
And strokes of paint in the case of paintings. But in the case of filmmaking, it's thought and sort of like planning and visualizing and putting together in a way
but it really does,
it's consumable.
Yeah, and it does start in that place of your imagination and the images that you see. Maybe it's like an object. It can be, you know, some article of clothing that a character is wearing. It can, like, it doesn't really matter where you start.
Prop, you know, a car that they're in. Or
right. There's not a like right or wrong way to start that process.
Right.
I think what, like I was saying before, we try to circumvent that because it's like, I just need to get something on the page. Yeah, okay, we want to get stuff on the page, but if you don't even know what you're looking at, you don't even know what you're seeing, then you're sort of defeating the purpose.
I guess that brings us to like the nuts and bolts of starting with just sort of like abstract stuff and then boiling it into a coherent storyline or beat sheet.
Yeah.
And that was one of the ways that we were able to beat sheet out how the story unfolds
based
for
on
the viewer.
What we see.
Right.
Based on, and not like initially, okay, this is the exact shot I have in mind.
Yeah, or we see the scene exactly as it is. It's sort of like a rough sketch. Again, you're like sketching out, oh, they're at this party.
Right.
This sort of stuff happens. You kind of sketch out what happens in raw format, even just in a sentence.
And maybe there are some of those images that pop up where it's like, oh, well, you know, I see a guitar that has a bunch of stickers on it, or I see like
or
a
they're
bunch
at the
of
doorstep
guys sitting on a couch, or people on a doorstep.
Yeah, and they're ringing the doorbell. You see the finger punch the doorbell. So these are little images that pop in your head that are just shaping what it is that you want to get across in your storytelling.
Because I think at least what I found is that your vision definitely starts with that imaginary place that it's very nebulous. It might be a little mushy. It might be like mushy in the sense of it has no shape. It's sort of, okay, what am I
it's like
really...
it's like blobs kind of, you know, and then
very inky. And then like when you start writing, you're giving it structure. You're giving that imagination its container.
Yeah, and that's what is also helpful about the Post-it note thing, I think.
Yeah.
To bring up that again, we talked about it last episode, but the Post-it notes allow you to sort of like take these blobs, these sort of scenes, or these beats. I mean, several beats could be in one scene.
Yeah.
You know, you could have, you know, if you learn more
especially
about
if
beats,
it's like a short film, like a 5-minute.
Yeah, it almost pretty much needs to. So you kind of have these beats, which are like, okay, just the opening frame, like what is on the screen, the very first thing you see.
Yeah.
Is the one beat. So the very next thing that you might have is introducing a certain character. That's another beat.
Right.
How are you going to introduce that person? What does that frame look like? Or what is that, you know, what do you need to get across there? And so those are the pieces that you could go, oh, okay, well, this this doesn't really make sense in the middle. Let me put it up closer towards the beginning or whatever to maybe tell this story in a funner way to kind of mix it up.
Yeah. And I mean, that exercise was really helpful for us because it allowed us to keep the vision flexible.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the time, at least I do this, it's like you think the way that you put it down on the paper is like set in stone. Even if it's digital, even if it's just on your Google Doc. It's like, it's not. You can move it around. Yeah. But the Post-it note, it really lets you move.
Physically move it around.
Yeah, physically
it's
move
much
those
easier
things. And then
to do
that's
it with
where
your hand.
Yeah, and that's where you can begin to visualize it more and more in your head.
Yeah.
Because you're looking at those Post-it notes and you're like, okay, all right, I can see I can see where the story's going.
Right.
And then I can start to get a little clearer on what exactly we're looking at in those particular scenes.
Right.
What exactly we see.
What are the motives of the characters and what do they want?
Well, I mean, just like shots.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, I see the, nail gun at her job or something. She's stapling something to a poster board or, like certain things like that.
Sure.
And then that's where
a lot of other stuff's kind of.
Well, I was going to say that's like, then you can start writing that stuff down there because that Post-it note visualization thing allows you to kind of just get, if the thing is still sort of indistinct, if the whole vision of the film or whatever it is that you're writing is still sort of like, I don't know, it's a little hazy. I'm not sure about this. The Post-it notes allows you to kind of get a clearer beginning, middle, end because you're working with those beats. Yeah. And then you put it down on the page.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that kind of gives us a place to, I guess, formulate the entirety of what the story is you're telling and what visually you're using to tell that story. So also, different props, different things that you might use in the story, different motives.
Well, and I was going to say, like, for, a case like us where we were writers and directors, you're also really honing in on more of those shots, the shots that you are like, no, this has to be in this scene. This is what I really see. I see the finger pushing the doorknob. I see the red phone. I see the, those things that are really clear in your mind's eye for that particular scene or that particular shot. And that's really important because those are things that eventually, as you move through like your treatment and stuff, you're then communicating to your cast and your crew.
Yeah, you're a production designer and then of course your actors and everything all the way through. So the tighter that vision can be, the better. So that's kind of, why you do a lot of the pre-pro that you do, is to get that vision of exactly the shots, exactly the colors, the lighting, everything you want,
Because again, what it is it's like your vision for this make-believe world, your vision for this world that it's completely from your imagination with people who are from your imagination. What does that look like? And what are these shots? What are these scenes? Who are these people? What is this world that you need to put onto the page that actually is going to help you tell the story of that world or tell the story of that experience?
Because one thing that's very challenging about film is that you're bringing together all these resources that you really have to be able to utilize well, efficiently. You have to be able to, and that's why there's so much pre-production that goes in to the processes, because you have to prepare for the moment when you have let's say shooting on like a really nice Alexa camera or something. You have, you've got to rent that, the lenses, all the operators that it requires to, to focus, and, you need a couple of ACs, you need an operator. Then you've got a DP. I mean, all those people and all those resources coming together at that one time. So you have to be prepared for it.
And that's just
know exactly what you want.
That's just the tech side of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just the tech. What is that? That's why the rehearsal side is so important to the actors and the table reads.
But then there's like the wardrobe element of it and the location.
Yeah, and that's all up to the director, and so that's what makes it tough, is you're making all those decisions.
Right. I have this theory about like books and even I guess TV shows, but more books. A writer sits there and envisions this world for so long, like their mind is concentrated on what the, characters look like, what the houses look like, what this whole world actually looks like. And they sit there for years doing that most of the time in their first novel or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we see these movies come to life, or we see these books come to life on screen as movies because these writers have sat there with this world for so long and they've really channeled their imagination onto the page.
Yeah.
And then you have people in, wardrobe, art department, like once this book is optioned for a film or TV show, who are then doing the same thing for this project to make it real. And then we get to see it on screen. And so it's like it starts in their imagination with the writer. And then through that process of sitting with that idea and that world for so long, they sort of manifested it in a way. Yeah, it's brought to life on screen. And that's what you're doing when you're writing your own film or you're writing your own whatever, is you're channeling your imagination onto the page and you're going to try to bring it to life on screen, whatever your vision is.
Yeah. And that's the art of this, that type of work.
And pre-production,
being able to do that well. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It's not an easy thing, but it's also very rewarding when you get to the
when you're
definitely.
When the thing that you're seeing or that you've been seeing for so many years,
it's incredible when
you get to see it on screen. And that's what our short film Queens of Noise became for us, because we've sat there with these characters for several years.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about the pre-production process is very much involved in that visualization exercise too. Like the whole concept of visualization is what pre-production is really centered on, I think.
Yeah, and I think you carried that from the writing into pre-pro, or if you're not doing the writing and you're just starting out with, okay, here's a script, let's do this. You start to imagine the scenes. You start to imagine what they look like, where they are, what the colors are, what makes sense for the story, and all those things.
Because that's what's so interesting about it, is that whether you are or not the writer, it like comes from your imagination. Then you've got to get it onto the page, and then somebody else is looking at the page, and then they're imagining it, and they're and they're going.
The DP has got to imagine.
What are the colors that I see,
designer.
or what's the lighting here?
Yeah, your gaffer's got to do it. Yeah, so everybody's kind of got to have a little say. Or obviously, it all gets okayed by the directors.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest challenges with that is actually visualize yourself having a successful day, getting all the footage that you intended.
Even before that.
Yeah, I mean,
having success with any of them.
Well, yeah, that's true. Like booking, let's say, whatever locations that you feel like are, perfect for the scene, or booking actors, doing the casting, you have to visualize yourself having success and things going your way,
which
as
is
much
what
as you can.
We endeavored to do when we were in our pre-production phase for our short film. That really started in mid-June, late June, July.
Yeah, just kind of taking a little time and like laying down, chilling, and going, like, hey, let's just go through this visualization technique where we're kind of like thinking about the thing happening.
And it sounds very woo-woo, it sounds like, okay, let's all have a visualization meditation. But one of my favorite examples of that are people like Michael Jordan or Peyton Manning. They used to do that. Michael Jordan would envision himself having this many points in a game. I'm going to make this many threes in the game. Like he put his mind to work, and then everything else just followed through in the game. And Peyton Manning would sit there and listen to tapes of people throwing touchdowns so that that's what he would then go in and do when it was game time. you know?
Yeah, you're just, you're putting
It's prep
yourself,
work.
you're just putting yourself in the shoes so you can kind of, experience the feeling that
Right.
would,
Like
that
you
would
would
give you.
before like an interview or something. We're like,
Mhm.
okay, I'm going to imagine the interviewers being like, wow, you're our ideal candidate. And,
Mhm.
and so that's what we did for our locations, for our wardrobes, for any like important meetings we had,
Yeah.
any sort of work that we were like, all right, well, we got to dive into this thing. Let's see ourselves doing the work.
Right.
Let's see ourselves having a positive result. Let's see ourselves being surprised.
Right.
And we had that. We went and
Yeah.
talked to one location for a scene that is at a thrift store. And we were just like going there to talk about using the location. And the owner was like, are you guys looking for wardrobe? Like she just
Right.
sort of volunteered her whole store for wardrobe.
Yeah. Just come pick out whatever you want.
Yeah.
And then you can use it, then come back, bring it back.
And so we were like, here we were
Perfect.
envisioning this pleasant surprise, and that's what it was. That's what happened for us. And so that sort of practice of again, like we were saying at the beginning, playing that mental game,
Mhm.
getting yourself in that headspace of, okay, we are going to make this project real, and we have to do these meetings. We have to maybe even just do the writing process, or we have to get this wardrobe, visualizing
Yeah.
your success, whatever that looks like for you.
Well, I mean, that's what's so good about doing that is you're building sort of like, it's almost, you can look at it like a muscle, because you're, that's sort of how we operate as humans, is you kind of like build a practice with something, and the more you do it, the better you become at it,
Yeah.
the more efficient you are.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just like that. I mean, you learn a skill. It's the same way.
Right.
So you're doing that with that sort of like, okay, let's imagine this working out,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just like planning out anything else that you do.
It's
in
like
your life.
that show, The Rehearsal with Nathan
Yeah,
Fielder.
exactly. You should really watch that if you've never
Where
watched
you're
it.
just
It's
going through every single possibility
so good.
and going, okay, how would I react if this happened? You know?
Yeah. So it's kind of like that. And then, so, carrying that into production
Mm-hmm.
is kind of where I was going with that, I guess.
Right.
Is just like, that's where you can actually get a lot of efficiency into your production is, okay, what is every detail, that we need for the scene?
Well, and that's
Let's
where
go all the way from the top, the lighting and camera, and every
mhm.
little detail, how the camera moves and what you want, and all the shots that you want, and
Yeah.
all these things that tell the story, all the way down to the minor, tiny little details of, what the makeup is, or what jewelry they might be
Right.
wearing, or whatever.
Well, and that's where I was
detail.
going to say, it's like that particular element of it, visualizing yourself in that day,
Yeah.
right? Doing all that stuff. It's so closely tied to the pre-production process,
Mm-hmm.
because let's say you're going through your shot list for
Mhm.
this one scene. You've got to be looking at all that stuff in your head. You've
Yeah.
got to be thinking of all of that stuff. You've got to be thinking about the location. How are we going to light this location? Where's the camera going to be set up? Where do we want the actors? Where
Yeah.
do we want the extras? What are the actors wearing?
Yeah, and what is the overhead diagram of what
Mhm.
this looks like? What's the exploded view on a spreadsheet look
Right.
like? Where it's like, here are all the props, here are all the wardrobe pieces, here are all the makeup pieces. Let's say there's a gag, like a blood gag or something that's crazy in it. Here are all the everything, extras.
Mm-hmm.
Down
And like
to the
I'm thinking
wardrobe.
in particular, we had a lot of interesting shots that we wanted to get for our diner scene, which is the first scene
Mhm.
in our film. We had to go to the diner and really just like envision, even though there's tons of people in this diner and we didn't want that many people in our scene, we go there and we're like, okay, what does this shot look like? You know, like
where are we gonna
sometimes
fly the camera around. What is it
sometimes
gonna
your imagination can only take you so far, or you've imagined a different sort of layout of the location in your head, but the location that you have is different.
Yeah.
So you've got to go to that physical place and still work with your imagination and be like, okay, let's set
be?
this up
How's this
here.
gonna all suss out in person?
Right. I think the pre-production comes into play because you can say, well, what else could I see opening up the film?
Right.
What else, like you said, the alternate shot? What might the alternate shot look like?
Yeah.
And I found when we were in pre-pro, we were location scouting and we're trying to envision how we're going to execute what it is that we wrote onto the page based on these locations that were essentially, offered for free, right? We're using them for free.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's only so much that you can manipulate with someone's actual place of business.
Yeah, for free without giving them money.
And
they're in there trying to like clean up the back and
yeah.
They've got certain lights on and we're like, oh God, can we get those lights off?
Well, I'm talking about just like location scouting.
Okay, yeah.
Where we thought like the tow yard, we thought the back of this place was their place of business. And then we're like structuring our scene around this whole back gate that looked really cool that they actually didn't own.
Yeah, that doesn't even belong to them. So we couldn't use it anyway. We just had to rethink the whole thing last day or two.
But it's that, and then I wanted to talk about the treatment. Because I found that we made a pitch deck. We mentioned that in the first episode. And that was really helpful for sort of visualizing the overall look and feel of this short film / aspiring TV series, right?
Yeah.
And then taking that even further is the treatment.
Right.
And I think both the pitch deck and the treatment become tools for you in that pre-production process for visualizing everything. The pitch deck is much more like, at least based on the one that we did, overview, right? Overarching. Here's just sort of the atmosphere. Here's kind of what things might look like. Treatment is like, all right, we're going into the nitty gritty.
We're going to talk about every detail of this film that we can.
Right.
And, do a page or so on the story and what are the 3 acts or what are the acts, and then go into characters. What are the characters in terms of what are they like? What are they wearing? Not like? What are they wearing? What are they,
what are their key props?
How do they hold themselves? All those things.
Yeah.
And you use reference stuff to kind of fill in the gaps, and you don't have the actors able to put into those wardrobe pieces to get into the document to make that clear to, let's say, your production designer or to just you. You don't have all that stuff, right? So you have to use Google and this character kind of reminds me of Eminem is what we did. And, so we put a shot of Eminem on his hoopty car or whatever it is. What does this character look like? Okay, moving on. Characters going into what is the look of each scene? What is each location look like?
Based on your vision.
Based on your vision in terms of lighting, color schemes, the wardrobes, the fabrics in wherever your location is, seating, etc. What is the, obviously the wardrobe, but lighting, what does all that stuff look like?
Well, and what I was saying, I said this kind of
for each scene
in the beginning of this episode where we are so used to consuming so much media, right? But I think the treatment is where that can actually become something useful, because you can be like, oh, that one scene in Poker Face where they've got this low angle shot of the villain. Let's get that screenshot.
Yeah.
Or, oh, this one shot from Marvelous Mrs. Maisel where they're in a diner. That's where that is so helpful, because you have those references from other TV shows and you can use those to help articulate your vision.
Yeah, exactly. I used Shot Deck.
That's right. And what is that?
There's a couple of them out there, but Shot Deck is the one I use. Essentially, all it is you can it's a repository of all of these images from films.
Yeah.
Screenshot stills from films, and then they show you
the color scheme, right?
Yeah, it shows you all of the color palette that's in that shot, and then it also gives you details about what lens and camera and
because that was one of the things that we sort of split up things as we did in this project overall, but for our treatment it was like, okay, well, I'll handle the wardrobe, I'll handle the makeup for these characters. That was really fun for me to be like, okay, so Chloe is more like this. I'm going to pick a distinct color scheme for her and her wardrobe. Lizzie's more like this. I'm going to find pictures on Pinterest mostly of, makeup and clothes and hair that really bring that character's persona to life on screen, and then breaking it up into each sort of scene. This is what she's going to wear in the diner. This is what she's going to wear at the tow yard, right?
Yeah.
And so that was really fun. And then you took over the more like color scheme, of each scene and the
kind of focus more on
gritty lighting
and what does the overall scene look like, where kind of characters placed, but just looking at other films.
And that was really, for me, as I guess I'll say first time director, that was really eye-opening, to use a visualization pun, thinking about color in that regard, and looking at film and looking at the shots that you got from Shot Deck and being like, oh, okay, so I guess I like green.
Right.
I would have never picked green, or I guess I like this yellow tinge to things, like training my eye to look at other projects for that particular thing.
Right, exactly.
And to go, oh, I see what you're seeing here. And then, again, that adds to the overall execution of your vision as a director, because you start to go, well, have I just been imagining this film in like really saturated in my head, and I haven't put that green tinge on it mentally?
Right.
And like, what does it look like when I do that? Do I like it?
Yeah.
And thinking about how color changes the vision.
Right.
That was definitely a learning moment for me. Still is.
Yeah. It's a constant learning, teaching,
because you've done color
moment. It's not easy. I mean, it's there's definitely a lot of skill that you have to acquire by just getting in there, and just go online and look for people that share their DaVinci Resolve, color node trees and all that kind of crazy.
But that was really cool. That's what's really cool about Shot Deck is that they do that. Like, they'll show this screen capture of,
they give you all the
tow yard,
the colors that they pick out.
Yeah.
Eyedropper type.
Right. And
tiles.
You're like, oh, so it's like really green.
See, yeah, this is a very orangey kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's kind of nice about that. Shot Deck is looking at that, and then you can kind of, just put a number of shots together. So like, I know we want this wide of the party, and I know we want this shot of them together talking trash about we just had our shots. And I know we want some kind of, jib that kind of comes out of the trees type of thing is what I was thinking. Etc. So
I think
that goes in the treatment.
I think that party scene is really one of the better.
Yeah. I showed the gaffer what that treatment page was in that scene,
and it was like a screenshot of Dua Lipa's Levitating music video. And a couple other things.
I found that on Shot Deck because they have music videos on there.
Yeah.
And so I just put a number of scenes together from different films, and they all kind of had this really purple thing. They also had
blue.
a real they had this pops of orange maybe in them, and so I showed that to Gaffer, and I was like, we want to have different colors coming out of these windows just to like kind of
break it up,
give it kind of a party sense. And then this sort of overall wash of purple coming, from overhead.
But that was one of the scenes that, like, I think you're going to show, like,
and then some strobes.
The treatment, right?
Yeah, I'll be showing that as we.
That it's like when we were there, and then when we had the footage. It was sort of like jaw dropping how close it was to the shot from the treatment, just in terms of the color. Like, it looked like the treatment, and so many of the other scenes turned out that way too. Like Darik's house,
right.
It was like, whoa, that is actually. And so that's I guess the point of all of this is that it's like, that treatment is where you really are like, okay, this is. You put what you see onto the page because you have to do that for a script. But your treatment is where you're like, this is the visual. This is what it actually looks like. Yeah. This is what the character's going to look like. This is the color.
Gives you just as many details in one place as you can get.
And it gives you sort of a map or, I don't know, something where you can like go back to and be like,
it's a roadmap.
This is what we're trying to make it look like. And it makes it, I think, easier to communicate your vision.
Yep, like we would show the makeup stuff to the makeup person.
Yeah,
and then the like the wardrobe stuff to
right,
whatever.
Where it's like these scenes, I want this makeup because I know that this other stuff is going on. And
then they can read all the other material too that could inform their decisions as well, and that also helps the actors. We one thing that really I mean, this is a side note, but we definitely did this, is that we, obviously shared all that with the actors, but when we got to the thrift store, we couldn't find stuff that we had picked out some stuff early, and that stuff just didn't work on them.
Right.
Stuff.
We had never done a fit.
Yeah. And so we were like, let's just, you guys become the characters, y'all go shopping.
Yeah.
And let's just pick out a bunch of options. And then that actually works. So, it can be a bit of a uphill battle, but you just have to keep pushing forward and going with your vision, trying to get to it.
Exactly. You have to be somewhat flexible with your vision when you are on a budget, when you're doing a smaller scale project like ours. If you have tons of money, you got millions of dollars that someone's invested in your thing, it's going to be a completely different story.
Totally different story.
You're going to be like, I don't care if the jacket costs $50,000. Get it,
Yeah, well, you do care if it's that much. But no, you don't care if it's $50. But, like we were like, our production designer's like, oh, dude, here are a couple of Amazon options for robes. And we're just like, we're going to go to the thrift store and try and find one. We never did find a robe for the guy. It's, it's like, oh yeah, we found these like $5,
tank tops.
Thank you. So anyways, like, yeah, it's that pre-pro and the pitch deck and the treatment is super critical.
Well, and I was going to say, like, when you have a lower or limited budget, like we were on, you have to be really flexible with your vision. Like, there's a vision that you don't have to be flexible with it on the page necessarily. Yeah. I think maybe if you're like, we're going to shoot this script and you don't have you're not going to be able to blow up a car or something. You've got to be flexible with that. Yeah. But like, you have to have some adaptability with the way that you are executing what it is that you see in your head. Right. When you do, like, you're doing something a little more small scale. But that's kind of what makes it fun too.
Yeah, and that's spontaneity comes out of that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's where something else can be made, and that's where some new vision can be created. Mm-hmm. Because, like you mentioned, with the actors going and shopping in that store,
right?
Well, we found a lot of great stuff, and they brought a lot of their own clothes that they felt were sort of fitted to the vision of the character too. And so it was like a combination of that, and we created something that was similar to the vision, but it was all its own because we had to be flexible. We had to adapt. And, that even goes back to the whole, like, visualizing your success, visualizing yourself not being overwhelmed, right? Like, visualizing handling things like that, handling moments where you've got to pivot and knowing that it's like, I can do this, Yeah.
It's like, you're always going to need to pivot. Somewhere.
Yeah. Like, things are not going to go exactly as you see them in your head, but because you've envisioned it, because you've envisioned the film, you've envisioned yourself moving forward with it, you're going to be able to handle whatever obstacles or pressures come your way. Because ultimately you're like, but this is the thing, is that we're going to make this thing happen. Yeah. That's what I see in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're just sort of like, damn the torpedoes, as my dad would say. You just move on forward and get whatever you can done. Right. You brought all this together, make it happen however you can. I mean, you can't, I can't tell you how many times I was terrified in my head that when we flew in someone from New York and 2 people from LA, we had to plan that and think that, okay, we're shooting a lot of this outdoors. Yeah. That if it just starts raining all weekend long, like, what are we going to do? Or if it's, something happens like that, right? Or something like one of them gets delayed because there's bad weather in New York or something.
Yeah. And that's what's funny is we did our shoot in August during a time when in Colorado Springs there's normally
a lot of
hail. Yeah, like problematic weather. And so we were just like, there are certain things that you don't factor into your vision that are out of your control that you just kind of have to hope for the best.
Yeah, but then you start to think of those things and you go, well, what's my plan B?
Right.
And we actually did move a location from, like, sort of up on top of a cliff.
That's right. Yeah.
Where it was overlooking the city to sort of a parking deck where we could potentially get cover under the deck and everything if it were to rain. But then the van didn't fit under the deck.
We didn't foresee that.
We shot out sort of out in the open anyways, but it was sort of on the parking decks. It kind of worked.
It didn't rain though.
And it didn't rain, so it ended up being perfect. But
no, you raise a good point where it's like the rehearsal. Like, okay, you have your vision. You have vision A. Yeah. You have vision A, which is these are the must-haves. These are the must get shots. These are the things that we have to have. I want that jacket, or I
Yeah.
want a van that looks like that, or I want
Right.
an actor who has XYZ. And then you have to have vision B,
Yeah.
which is like, okay, so if we have extra time, here's a shot we want to get. If the shot does not work out, this is the alternate shot.
Yeah.
If the clothing doesn't work, here's what we do.
Yeah.
And maybe even you have to have plan C sometimes, vision C.
Right. Yeah. Here's what we have to can and stuff, but to make the time perhaps,
Right.
or for us it was okay. A van is definitely, we can't buy an old van, even
No.
if $2,000-$3,000. I still don't want to buy that.
No.
So let's go out and put cards on people's vans until somebody calls us, and people did call us.
They did.
But the schedules never lined up, so we couldn't even use an old van. So we went out and did all that work. No old van still.
There was
so
one van.
And no, but it wouldn't.
But it
drive.
wouldn't run.
And so you'd have to trailer it there, and it was just like, okay, I literally have nothing, except for our AD mentioned that his sister has a Sprinter van. So somehow we're gonna have to make the Sprinter van, instead of doing an old shitty van, the Sprinter van, which turned into kind of funnier punchline.
Well, I was gonna say that was one of the key moments where we had to pivot, because our vision was an old piece of shit 1980s Dodge van.
Yeah,
that was
a really bad paint job.
Yeah, that was a non-negotiable. We were there's no way we're not going to get a van like that.
Yeah, he told me about this Sprinter van, and I'm like, nah,
we don't want no Sprinter van. Get out of here.
That's not right for the story.
Yeah, and it worked. It fit within the overall project.
Yeah, it did. It made sense.
But
you guys be the judge. You tell us.
Well, they can't watch it yet.
Yeah, I know, but when it comes out, okay. Well, we're gonna do a premiere here in the Colorado Springs area. So if you live in this area, you can come check out the premiere whenever that happens.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be hopefully in February timeframe of 26.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're shooting for. If you can't make that, we're going to do a festival run after that. So hopefully we can run it in a festival in your town or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe comment and tell us a festival that you want to see Queens of Noise at, and we'll see if we can submit it there and get in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all coming up soon.
We didn't get a chance to talk about how much visualization factors into post-production.
Yeah.
But, it does. But yeah, now we're visualizing the end, the film actually being finished, finalized. And then we want to visualize, it showing in a bunch of film festivals and people laughing and clapping and enjoying the show.
It's our labor of love for the last year.
Mm-hmm.
So
this project has been living rent free in our heads for quite a while.
Many years. So it's taken up a lot of space. It's at least half the house right now.
We are looking forward to sharing it and having the final project. So we hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Queens of Noise podcast. We hope you found it useful, informative. Hopefully you've gotten something from it that you can apply to your own creative practice.
Yeah, or at least you've enjoyed hearing us ramble.
Yeah. If that is the case, we do encourage you to like and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it. If you do have a film festival that you want us to submit it to, drop it in the comments and share it with your friends. And
yeah, we're on YouTube. We'll be posting this there, of course. If you found it there, then you're watching it maybe, but we will be posting behind the scenes and more to come.
Yeah. Stay tuned for that. I guess that's a good one. We'll end it on that.
All right.
Bye for now.
Have a great one.